What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. I make music as AfroDJMac. And today we have a little bit of like a podcast crossover happening here because I'm talking with Dan Giffin of the Ableton Live Music Producer Podcast. What's going on, Dan?
What's up?
How are you?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I was just on your podcast like 3 days ago. Talking audio effects, and we're back again.
Yeah, it seems like way too long. We should do this more often. It was fun.
Yeah. Well, I've been a fan of your podcast for a while, ever since I found it. And it was fun meeting you at Ableton Loop and, talking to you when I first met you. And we met in the Food Man, studio session, and you started speaking about the track you played, and I was like, I know this voice. It's pretty cool.
Thanks, man. Yeah, no, I love your podcast as well, and your music and what you're doing here, and hopefully someday my podcast will be as great as yours. We're working on it.
I think it's pretty cool.
New.
You guys do a lot of nice stuff, like the tips and tricks and like really like practical stuff that you can apply, which I think is fun and useful for me. I've definitely got some cool ideas out of it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of podcasts out there, and I've been using Ableton for quite some time, and I feel like it's a good niche because there's so many different things you can do with the software itself, and it really kind of brings a hub of producers together. So we've kind of focused specifically on people who use Ableton Live or are wanting to produce music in some fashion with Ableton. So that's kind of the niche that I've been diving in hard with the podcast and the website I've been doing and everything else in life. It all comes back to Ableton.
I think it's the community is something that did pull me in a little extra, to using live, because I kind of dabbled in a few different DAWs, and there was never like this kind of like cult almost, or like this like group of people that were, there's so much information you can find online about it and so many people doing interesting things that it really helps suck you into the software itself.
Yeah, no, it's very true, man. It really does kind of have like a family element. I started out in Pro Tools, well, really GarageBand. I feel like that's a typical story. People start out in GarageBand just because it comes with their MacBook, and they're like, what's this? And then I kind of dove into the Pro Tools world, and I was like, there's got to be something more to life than Pro Tools. And then I found Logic, and I got Logic Pro certified about 5 years ago, and was using Ableton even before then, but now I'm all Ableton all the time. So you're right though, there is like a community aspect, because even as the Ableton user group organizer for Indianapolis, I was surprised how easy it was just to contact them and to be able to start a user group. Obviously there wasn't one in Indianapolis, and it's a developing city. It's almost as big as Austin, Texas. And so I was surprised there wasn't a user group here. But when I contacted them about 3 years ago to start one, they were super supportive, and they're all about the community. They even helped us with running some social media ads to get people out to our events when we first started. And just the whole company just seems it's run by some really solid people who are really focused on growing the software and growing the community and relationships in the midst of all of it. So it's been cool to be part of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've seen that firsthand. And I think, where we met at Ableton Loop was a really good example of that, how it wasn't like a product, showcase thing, like look at these features. It was really just, let's get a bunch of people that are into the same thing in similar walks of life and get them all together and see what happens.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it was, man. It was just random conversations and all kinds of just people talking and sharing knowledge and wisdom. And when you go to events like that, you realize how much you don't know, because like you get there, and I thought I knew a lot until I started having conversations with the people who were like in the game way longer and way smarter than me in a lot of areas. And I'm like, oh, wow, I have so much to learn. The world is so much bigger than what I thought it was with music production.
Yeah, it's true, because like you start hearing what some people are doing, you're like, whoa, like they've
Oh,
gone way down that road that I haven't even gone into yet, and like this other person's gone into this, and it's
I was talking to one guy who was using Max for Live patches in Ableton to do robotics. Like he was programming robots with
Wow.
MIDI's, like MIDI and CC values and all this other stuff. And it was like, wow, that's next level, man. That's
Yeah,
cool.
wow, that's cool. So what, like using MIDI controllers and knobs to get movements in
Yeah,
the
like I
robots?
don't fully know exactly what it was. He was kind of a mad scientist. He had crazy hair, and I don't remember his exact name, but he was doing some cool stuff in Germany,
Nice.
and he had a cool thick German accent.
Well, I remember they came out with a pack maybe 2 years ago or so, where they were really emphasizing like this physical world stuff, where you can I don't remember what it was called. I'm sure it was Max for Live, but where you were able to like make things happen. I think they had like Lego setups and all
Oh,
kinds of
that's
crazy
crazy.
stuff going on. I'll have to look that up. And
Yeah.
that was one of those things where I sort of said, that's a little out of my league. That's
I'm gonna just focus on music. Yeah.
yeah, sometimes you have to
Yeah.
just decide like what you're going to work on and what you're going to leave behind.
Exactly. No, it's true, man. Like it's one of those balances of like I could nerd out in Max for Live and spend 6 years of my life learning how to code, but by the end of the day,
Right.
I'm never gonna make music. Kind of
Yeah.
reminds me of this really funny meme that went viral. I don't know if you saw it. It was like poking at the idea of people who are so purist that they don't use sample packs to produce music. And it was, I don't know if you saw that, but
I don't think
it
so.
started out is something along the lines like, yeah, I started making music and I started using sample packs, but then I thought that was cheating. So I started making my own samples and recording those. And then I realized that was cheating. And so I ended up like actually like skinning animals to make the heads of the drums that I was making. And I found out that was cheating. And so I started like fashioning all this stuff, like using sheep materials to make my own sounds. And then I thought that was cheating. So I started a goat farm to actually raise the sheep to like make the stuff to make my sounds. And it's like now I haven't made music because I'm too busy running my sheep farm or something like that.
Yeah.
It was like ridiculous.
I think I did see that where if you
Yeah.
can kind of keep going backwards and
Right.
yeah,
Right. And eventually you're just not making music because you're just,
I can
yeah.
relate to that on some level. I was kind of talking to you about that before we started the actual show. Just the idea of like, I love making my own sounds, and sometimes I feel like I'd spend more time doing that than actually making the music with the sounds. And by the time
Yeah.
I move on to some other sound I want to make, it's like, but I didn't even use those hundreds of other sounds I just made.
Exactly. No, that's so true, man. And like to even go on top of that, I feel like one thing that's helped me continue to make music is by staying really inspired and
Mm,
surrounding myself with people that inspire me. And I think the best mentality when it comes to continuing to make music and do what you love, I feel like, is to always be a learner first,
yeah.
because there's always somebody who's better than you. I heard one of my favorite quotes. There's a book that, speaking of inspiration and making music, there's a book called The Artisan Soul by a guy named Erwin McManus. Definitely check it out sometime if you get the chance. I'm a huge fan of that dude. And he wrote a book, and it was all about like how we were like created to create our own futures and how our lives are work of art and how we like find the most joy when we like invest into the passions of what we do. And for us, it's music, right? And so, um, one thing that I thought was really cool that he said in that book was comparison kills creativity.
Mm,
And I was like, that's very true. And so like when it comes to producing music, like not comparing myself to others, but finding the opportunity to constantly learn from others, I feel like is where my best music is created, because I'm constantly stretching myself and growing and expanding myself and being inspired in that process to keep making music, I think is really
right.
important. It's something I've been learning this last year.
Oh, that's a great lesson because I can certainly think of 100 times where I've been working on something like, yeah, this is cool. And then I listen to something else and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. Right.
my song's terrible. Or like,
Yeah.
it's not as loud. It doesn't hit as hard. It's just not as interesting. My vocals are weak.
Right.
And
Yeah, and you just want to go crawl in a hole and like eat a tub of ice cream and cry. And it's that's the thing about music is it's so subjective. And
mm,
like um this is something we were talking about the other day when you were doing the podcast with our podcast. And one thing we were talking about is like being able to like grow your skills, and how one of the things you said was being able to know how to get to from A to B really quickly. And so, like, the more you know, and the more you grow, and the more you learn, a lot of it's by experience, but a lot of it is also just putting in the hours and the time to actually be able to get to the place you want to be faster.
Mm.
And that comes with like learning and experience. And you know, people who follow your podcast or, you know, watch your tutorial videos that you do, I think are really important to be able to learn from other people so that you can you're able to master inspired because you know how to get results quicker from experience. So yeah.
Yeah, I do a pretty healthy diet of tutorials, reading up, and all kinds of stuff, trying to improve the skill set. And music is a funny thing for me, like kind of like what you're saying about the comparison thing. There's definitely the technical aspect of being like a good player, a good singer, a good whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and at the same time, though, it almost only matters to a certain point because so many of my favorite musicians aren't technically the most amazing musicians or singers, but they have something that like helps them express their feeling or their whatever it is they're doing. It connects with me, and
Yeah.
it's actually kind of rarely the technical skill that I go, oh yeah, like, you know,
That's true.
but you need that to get to the point too. So there's a funny balance, and it is a shame to feel, you know, bad about yourself and your abilities, you know, for those reasons, like your technical prowess, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, no, man, that's said really well. Like, I 100% agree with that. I mean, you look from the technicality of like Jimi Hendrix. Like,
Right.
he was a right-handed guy who learned how to play a left-handed guitar and taught himself without any rule book, because he couldn't afford a right-handed guitar. And
Mm.
you know, like, that's a good example of somebody who's just like, you know what, I'm just gonna kind of learn and experience and like teach myself and he crafted his own style of playing out of that, you know. So
He's an excellent example, actually, of somebody who really went with style in a lot of ways, but his technical expertise also like went along with it. And it almost
yeah.
like his style informed the technical part. You know, there was because what he was doing was just so different. Like
Yeah.
there wasn't really too many people for him to learn that from.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of cool like that, you know, by the time we get Jimi Hendrix as we know him, I mean, he's an insane player and he's
Right.
amazing.
Yeah. No, for sure. I would give your left arm to play guitar like him. I really would.
My left arm?
Yeah, not mine, because then I
Yeah.
couldn't play. It would be yours.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
good trade, I guess.
It would be for me, it'd be a great trade. But yeah, no, I mean, it's true. I find a lot of people who through the website that I have right now, teaching Ableton, and just private lessons of people I've talked to in the past, a lot of them are like, you know, I want to be Dead Mouse, or I want to be Bass Nectar, or I want to be whoever. And it's like, okay, well, the world already has one of those. We don't
Right.
really need another one. You know, what we
Yeah.
need is you. We need you to make music that's authentic, because that's what's going to really resonate with people. You
Right.
know. And yeah, I mean, it might be cool to have a song that sounds similar from them. It's great to draw inspiration from other people, but you know, I think you're kind of cutting yourself short as a producer and as a musician and artist if you want to be exactly just like somebody else, because you know, what's that Dr. Seuss book? It's like, you are the only you that you can be, or something like that.
Yeah.
Kind of that thing.
It's a good point because, you know, I've been there too. I think there
Right.
was a time in my life where I wanted to be Jimi Hendrix and I
Oh yeah,
wanted to
we
be
all
Kurt
have.
Cobain and I wanted to be,
Yeah, all of us.
but all I could ever be would be like a second rate hack. But it takes a lot of confidence and self belief to trust that whatever it is you bring to the table is worth bringing to the table in the first
Yeah.
place, and to go with your own kind of vision. It's a hard thing
That's
to
true.
get comfortable with.
Yeah. No, and it's scary too, man. Like,
Yeah.
there's a reason that like not everybody jumps on a stage and like starts playing shows, you know. I mean, it's hard to put yourself out there. It's hard to even share your song like with a friend in your car when you first start producing maybe your first song, you know. I mean, it's that vulnerability of like
Yeah.
putting yourself out there, you know. And it's no different, I think, for somebody to paint a picture and like display it in an art show or something for people. It's kind of the same concept. But I think, you know, when you really create something, you know, it's an expression of who you are. And I think that's the best art that people make, is when
Mm.
it's an expression of themselves or something that they're inspired from and it's authentic. And so I try to make music that's similar. That's just kind of an expression of who I am. And I used to kind of think like I have to find my sound so I can only do one genre. You know, like I can only do one genre. And now I'm kind of fighting that mentality or school of thought, in the sense of being like, I'm just going to kind of create whatever sound or genre inspires me in the moment. And I find that's usually when my best music comes out.
Mm. That's pretty cool. So let me ask you a little bit like how you got your start. I'm looking at your
Sure.
bio here, and we're taken back to drum lessons in fourth grade. And I
Oh
guess
yeah.
something I'm kind of interested in here is like it seems like you have a kind of like classical technical training, like with the school band, I assume maybe, or and then
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
wind up
kind of.
in like electronic music training at Dubspot. So yeah, tell me a little bit about your journey here.
Yeah, man. I was born in 1988. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, basically, yeah, it was started back in like fourth grade. I started doing like drum lessons. I was forced to learn piano, which at the time I really didn't want to learn.
Mhm.
But I'm really thankful for all that, because I think having some kind of background of like technical or classical training can take you a long way. In today's music, I mean, anybody producing with software like Ableton, you don't have to have really any music theory to get started, which is cool. But I'm kind of glad I did in the day. But yeah, like fast forwarding throughout like high school, playing in the marching band and stuff, I was a total band nerd.
Nice.
And I graduated from there, went on my first tour, got picked up by some tiny little Christian band that was playing the Midwest. And so I jumped on their tour bus and ended up getting fired after like 2 months of that, because I was just an irresponsible kid who
Mhm.
just wanted to play drums and tour and live the rock star life. and so that was fun. Finished that, and then I was like, you know, maybe I need to go to school and get a degree, because that's what everybody is telling me I need to do. So I did that. I actually went to school for marketing, but continued to play in bands doing drums. And then I started hanging out with some people who were really getting into electronic music, and this was probably like in 2010. And so I was like, man, I really want to get deeper into this electronic thing. So I ended up moving out to New York City, and I studied at a school called Dubspot, and I took their Ableton Live music production program. That was in 2012,
Hmm.
back when Dubspot was thriving in New York. Rest in peace.
Hmm.
And so was really grateful to hang out with some amazing producers there who kind of took me under their wing and taught me a lot, even after I finished that course. There's a guy in particular, after I finished Ableton, his name's Danny Wyatt. He started the mixing and mastering program there at Dubspot, and he also has another website called Next Level Sound. And he's a brilliant Grammy platinum mixing mastering engineer. He's worked with like Nora Jones and Old Dirty Bastard and a lot of different people. And so he taught me a lot of what I know with mixing and mastering. Because after I went to school at Dubspot, I knew Ableton, I was producing, and I was like, why do all my tracks sound like crap? Like, why can't I make them sound radio quality or whatever? So I ended up taking his class. And then after that, he kind of took me under his wing, and I kind of studied underneath him and got to go to his studio a few times and just nerd out on his process inside the box mixing and mastering. So I got into the mastering world a lot deeper. Um, Ended up getting Logic Pro certified after that. Still fell in love with Ableton, stuck around with Ableton, moved to Indianapolis, and got picked up by a large recording studio called The Lodge. And I helped them start an Ableton music production program out of that studio. Got to meet a lot of really cool people through that process that were touring through Indy. A lot of times you have artists that are touring through major cities, And if they have a big budget or if they're on a huge label, they'll the label will usually pay for that artist to have some recording time, either the day before or after their gig. So I got to meet like Mac Miller when he was in the studio there before he passed away. He's a great dude, really, honestly, one of the most entertaining, most fun people I've really ever got to hang out with in an evening. But we nerded out in Ableton, and I showed him a bunch of Ableton like shortcuts and hacks and things while he was there, and got to meet a lot of other really cool people while at that studio. And then at that point, I had a lot of people wanting to take the Ableton class, but they either couldn't afford it or didn't work out with their schedule with private lessons and all that other stuff. So started a website called liveproducersonline.com. And now we are more of a community. It started out with just me teaching Ableton and video tutorial stuff, and now it's really become a community of other Ableton certified trainers and other producers around the world. We started in May this year, so it's still pretty new, but it's a social community of people, and everybody gets a profile. You can sign up for free with the membership, and it's a good way to connect and join the private forum and ask questions and be able to learn together as a community and just really connect with other producers. And it's all based around people using Ableton Live. So it's a good time.
Nice.
It's kind of how I got to where I'm at today. So
yeah, that sounds like a pretty cool journey, and getting to see like a lot of different people work in different studios, different places, and different aspects, I guess, of the process, you know, the whole production process, all the way from writing to mastering.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And like, I always kind of had a hunger to, I guess, see not just the in the box part, but wanting to go into more of the audio engineering side and really understand like, you know, how do you get the sound? Like, you know, it's cool to be able to have a really fat kick drum by throwing some plugins on it, but to really understand like how to craft either the sound of that drum from like a digital kick drum standpoint with the sound design, like the ground up, how it was really made, to being able to learn how to mic a real kick drum in real life and get like the perfect miking placement, all the way from the beginning to end. I was always fascinated with like the ground up workflow of how stuff actually happened to get a really big fat sound. So yeah, it's good to have, I think, the engineering side as well as you know, the digital side of just producing. I think if you can do both really well, it takes you a lot farther.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and you've got, I guess, obviously the training too as a percussionist to bring to the table too. Playing in
Yeah,
marching band and stuff like that, much formal kind of
it's
school,
helped.
traditional.
Yeah, man, for sure. It's like, you know, having an acoustic drum set is always nice, but when you live like in Manhattan, your neighbors will hate you.
Yeah.
So I had to give that up real quick. And so it kind of forced me to get into more of the electric drum side of things. So now when I play live, I'm usually playing a Roland. Well, it was an SPD, but now I moved over to the Octopad because I love it. It's great. It's good for live looping, and just you can beat the snot out of it and it's not going to break. So
Right.
it's not.
Yeah, those are nice. And I often see people have them racked up with their acoustic kit too, kind of
Right.
doing like a nice hybrid thing.
Yeah, yeah. I'll do that sometimes depending on the venue. So
Yeah.
if it's a smaller place, you don't want to be blasting people away with like acoustic snare drums and cymbals and stuff.
I'm glad you understand that, because I think that's something that a lot of, you know, I came up playing in a lot of rock bands and little
Yeah,
bars and venues like that. And
totally.
it's surprising how little thought often goes into the space you're playing, where
It's true.
just we're still turning up to 11 and we're still bashing as hard as we can.
Yeah.
I think in one of my last bands, something that really helped us and made us stand out is we were really sensitive to that. And we thought about that a lot. We'd even go, even though we were kind of like this sort of insane, like surf punk rock thing,
Yeah.
we would go to like bundle sticks just to keep the volume down. And like,
Yeah. No, you have to, because that's a good way to lose fans if
oh, yeah.
everybody's ears are bleeding by the end of the show.
You can't enjoy anything if it's too loud, even your
It's true.
favorite artist in the world, if it's too much. And I've been to shows where either it was too loud or sometimes the bass is just out of control, kind of
Yeah.
changing my heart rate too much.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. Like so there's a church I've been going to here in India, and like the sound was so bad. I literally had to volunteer my time the next Sunday just because I was like, I can't take this. Like, I
Mm.
won't sleep tonight knowing that it's gonna sound like this next Sunday. This is terrible.
Yeah.
It's like the curse of a true musician or engineer is like you can't enjoy a show if like there's some bad resonating frequency on the guitar or something. It just like kills you.
Yeah, that's funny, right? Like as you demystify it a bit, then you start to like notice and you start to say, "Oh no."
It's true. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
There's at my job at my school, there's a mic and a mixer, and it's just on this like rolling cart, and clearly like no one knows how to use it because always the gain knob is cranked all the way, but the fader is like you can only like nudge it like a centimeter. And it always welcome to, like it sounds like this like distorted death metal,
Oh man,
mic every time anyone tries to make an announcement on it. And
that
I'm always like, let me
sounds
at that thing.
horrible. Yeah. No, somebody needs to know. You
Yeah.
gotta That's crazy. Yeah, for real. That's one nice thing about digital mixers. If you can have somebody who knows what they're doing, set it right once for the room and
Yeah, right.
give them kind of a general idea where to keep stuff. Yeah, it's amazing to me like how I've seen, and this doesn't just go for running sound, but just bands in general. Like there's some really bad music out there that gets a lot of publicity. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know any nice way of saying that. I'm trying to think, but like that's basically the bottom line. Like it was crazy. Like I've been to a lot of music festivals, and sometimes I hear somebody playing and I'm like, how did you get this gig? Like
Mm.
how did you get this? But yeah, same
It's
goes for running sound. Some people are just not meant to sit behind a soundboard or sing into a microphone, you know.
Yeah, but it's always nice when you do get like a sound person that's really invested in making it sound good.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, I haven't done a lot of live sound, but I've got some friends that do it, and they're kind of shit on a lot by the bands and by the performers and underappreciated by the venues.
Yeah.
So I can understand the sometimes you run into the jaded sound person, and they're just whatever, they don't care and they leave during your
Yeah.
set.
Yeah.
But so important, anyone performing, make sure you're cool to your sound person and treat them
That's
well,
true.
be
Yes.
respectful.
Yeah, no, there's something to be said about that. Is you call it good karma or whatever, but if
Yeah.
one thing I've learned like in investing more time and energy in my own music is just to love the hell out of your fans and the people
Hmm.
that you work with. That's really what it's about, man. Like in the end of the day is just treating other people with kindness and respect. And one thing I tell even my students in like the classes I've taught with Ableton and music production and is like uh, the whole idea of just unconditionally loving people. I feel like you're going to get way more support and like your career is going to go much farther with that kind of mentality just in general. And and people who are afraid to like ask questions in class, I always tell them like, there's no such thing as stupid questions. Like we're all here to learn and grow together. We're all human. It's okay to make
Yeah.
mistakes in your productions. It's okay to ask questions. And a lot of my favorite artists and bands are people who maybe don't make like consistently the most amazing music I've ever heard, but like I just either personally know them and I want to support them because I just know they're good people, in the
Yeah.
end of the day. Like, and I heard it said really well. I was working with the band Perry in Nashville a couple months ago, helping set up their live performance for their upcoming tour on their new album. And I was talking to their main sound guy who's been working with them for like over 25 years or something like ridiculous. And he said the same thing. He's like, in the music industry, it really comes down to more about the relationships than anything else. And if you want to be successful, it's not just about knowing the right people, but it's having the right people know you.
Mm.
And I thought that's an interesting perspective because you can know all the right people, but if they don't really know who you are, then they're probably not going to want to work with you.
Yeah.
And he said that I mean, this guy is the guy who's like, he's done engineering and traveled on tour doing the main sound for some of the biggest Grammy platinum artists all over the world. And he told me, he's like, I would much rather work with somebody whose skill set was average and I really enjoyed them as a person than working with the best with somebody who is a complete dick.
Yeah.
So,
Also true.
Yeah.
It's amazing how far some kindness goes. And I've heard it put like, no one needs more enemies. Like, what's the point? Might as well be good to people.
Right. Exactly.
And it's so true that you'd rather be surrounded by that. That's what I think people forget sometimes, is that when you get hired to do a job, any job really, they're not just hiring you for your abilities. You're the person they're going to see every day now.
Yeah.
So you have to be somebody people want to see every day. When I got my teaching job, I always tell my students this in school, because I was hired to fill in for another teacher she was having a baby. So she had to leave. And I got hired kind of last minute, and I didn't know much, and in fact they were reading The Catcher in the Rye, which I had never read up until that point. Never read it in my life, and they're halfway through it. So I have to read this book real fast and catch up. But
nice.
I made it a point to be nice and smile to everybody that I saw. So I see someone in the hallway, hey, how you doing? Good morning. Just friendly things like that. And I also made it a point to ask questions. When I didn't know something, ask a question, because I think people see that as like a sign of weakness. Like, oh, you don't know how to do it. Like, that's what they think is going to happen. Yeah. But in reality, what I think happens is it shows, one, you care enough to do a good job that you'll ask the question. And the other thing I think that happens is it also says, number two, I think you're smart enough to help me. Can you help me? And it's this kind of like little like, like it pumps that person up a little bit.
For sure.
And by the time at the end of the year, they were looking for a new English teacher. And I had people vouching for me, saying I was a great teacher, that never saw me teach for a second.
Oh, wow.
They never saw me in the classroom. They just knew me as the nice guy, and I was trying to do a good job. And I mean, for all they knew, I could have been showing, WrestleMania videotapes and handing out donuts every day. But because of that, it worked in my favor.
Oh, yeah, sure.
It taught me a lesson. When I started hearing some of these people say, like, yeah, you should hire this guy. He's good. I was kind of like, in my head, I'm like, you don't know if I'm any good.
Like, dude, you're completely lying right now.
I mean, you might like me maybe, but like,
Well, what's not to like, Brian? Right.
But it's such an important lesson. And so many people, think like, I don't know, maybe it's a shyness too, and like they don't want to seem like they don't know what they're doing. But asking questions as a teacher, whether it's music or my high school English, I get excited. It's like, oh, you want to know? Oh, great. And you think I can help you? Awesome. Yeah. That makes me feel good.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're all nerds in the music realm. So like when you meet another nerd who wants to learn, I mean, we could just nerd out all day long. That's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah, it gets exciting. Oh, great.
Right, exactly. Especially teach you about oscillators. It sounds so fun.
I know, and like that's a hard thing to talk to like, your significant other about if they have no interest in,
or they don't understand.
Yeah,
they don't.
My wife is super supportive and cool, but she's not really gonna get so interested if I start telling her how I morphed it from the saw wave to to a square, and then all of a sudden it kind of cut through the mix a little better. She's gonna be like, okay, it sounds great.
Right. Yeah. And then she starts wondering like where's this like money going from our bank account on Black Friday? It's like Sound Toys, FabFilter.
Right.
What is this? Like, honey, I promise it's important. This is a big deal. Trust me. This is gonna enrich our lives. Really will.
That's funny, but it's true. And that's why it's so nice to have people to get a chance to talk to. I'm sure you found that through the podcast. It's a sort of built-in way to just connect with somebody about what they do and share ideas. Absolutely,
man. That's actually not to jump off topic, but that's kind of how I got my artist name Philia. Philia. If you don't know, it means ancient Greek for intimate friendship and love. And like there was only one other band. Like I kind of found it on accident. I was just looking for an artist name, and I was searching like different languages and words for like friendship and love and stuff, because I feel like that resonates with a lot of my music and stuff. But there was like one like hardcore like metal Filipino band that was called Philia, and I was like, oh well, they're not like super huge, so I'm just gonna go with it. So thanks, Google. So that's kind of how I adopted my name, and
like
kind of goes along with the lines of, just loving people,
yeah,
making music, having a good time. It's kind of what the name means. It's my music's about.
That's a nice positive message, though. Yeah. And maybe that's a great transition, because I did want to talk to you a little bit about your music. It sounds great, by the way. You just released a new album, Miracles Happen, Volume 1.
Yes. At a nearest Spotify, iTunes dealer near you.
Right.
Yeah.
Near your pocket, right?
Exactly. Yeah. All over the place. Yeah. We were just talking about distribution. I use DistroKid to distribute it to all those major stores. I'm really happy. If anybody out there who's a producer listening, I think Brian and I both would agree that DistroKid's a great option for distributing your music.
Very easy. Yeah, for sure. Very simple, and it's out there, just like
right.
that.
Yeah.
So tell me about the album a little bit. The process. One thing I maybe I'll point out, and I'll let you kind of riff off of this. And it has to do with percussion, actually. One thing I liked about the tracks was, you've got like your kind of big beats, and those are really tight. But then there's like a lot of stuff going on that's a bit looser. And it sounds maybe even like it was performed live, chimey, almost like shakery type of stuff. But yeah, it gives the tracks a really nice organic feel. So it's not like super stiff electronic music, but it really has a great groove.
Well, thanks, man. No, I really appreciate that. It means a lot. I started doing more of my own real samples, whether it was just recording on my crappy iPhone speaker, and then sending myself the file and putting it in the project later, and actually getting some real session players to actually play on the album, so it does have that human element, because there are real people playing a lot of those things. I also play drums and guitar, so there is live drums and guitar on there, but I love mixing the whole live humanistic live performance element with like the whole electronic program type of thing. So some tracks I'll play like on a push controller, like an Ableton push MIDI controller. I'll play the drums with my fingers, and other tracks I'm actually playing those on like my electric Roland TD30 kit, my drum kit. And then obviously playing live guitar. I do use samples in certain areas, but like one day I was walking outside and it was raining, and I'm like, ooh, the rain sounds cool. So I pulled out my phone and I just like recorded on my back porch of just the rain. And I put that in a project and put some like Valhalla reverb on it and made it sound real spacey, and just kind of having that playfulness of always pushing the boundaries of like adding some kind of realistic element record my productions, even if it's just a small little background white noise sweep or something I manipulate. I like the idea of having all kinds of creative realness in each song.
Well, I think that sometimes in the digital world, things are really sterile. Like if you press play without anything on your tracks, it's pure silence. I mean, even if you had a tape machine and press play, you'll still hear like a hiss or a little bit of an ambience, sort of. So I think doing things like that is a great way to kind of bring some life and give it a place to exist.
Absolutely, man.
And I thought this too in the listening session. It has like this sort of outdoorsy feeling to it, like woodsy. I don't know.
That's funny you say that. So like my logo is actually a tree, so that kind of makes sense.
Well, I found it funny. Like when I saw the album cover, I was like, "Oh, look at that!" It really fits because it's a picture of some trees.
Right. Well, funny story. When I was really little, like everybody in kindergarten, their teacher, whoever asked them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And like I wholeheartedly ended up telling my teacher when I grow up I wanted to be a tree, and I was like serious. And like she told my mom, I'm sure my mom was like, this, my son is special. Like we're going to put him in one of those special classes now. No, but yeah, I mean, everybody's like, I want to be a policeman or fireman. No, I want to be a tree. I want to be a tree when I grow. I still think it'd be cool. I don't know if it's possible, but
We're gonna have
yeah.
to call Danny's house today.
Yeah. Yeah, right. No, but another story to go with that is there's a huge music festival, brings in about 60,000 people every year. It's called Electric Forest. It's up in northern Michigan. Um, and a lot of people think it's all just EDM, but they actually have a lot of jam bands now and like a lot more than just electronic music. But I went there for the first time about 3 years ago, and I went with a group of friends camping. And I don't know if, you know, now that I'm like, I just turned 30, and I was like, I don't know if I can keep doing the 4-day festival camping thing, because I like wake up after sleeping on the ground for 4 days. It's not the same when you were like 19 or 20. But it was cool. It was a great experience, and it really was fun. I lost all of my friends one day, and I didn't even care because there's so much to see and do there, and you're meeting new people. And I was just wandering by myself, and I was walking through the forest, and I just was thinking to myself, I was like, you know, it'd be really fun to play here someday. I would love to meet the right person, and maybe that opportunity would happen. And this is when I first started the name Philia. Like I just found it on Google like a week before. I just released like my first song on SoundCloud under that name, and ended up saying a little prayer in my head. I was like, man, it'd be really cool. Like, God, give me the opportunity to play here someday. I like physically literally ran into a tree right after I thought that in my head. Not kidding. I'm not making this up. And I ran into a tree, and I looked up, and there was this sign, and that's actually the album cover.
This miracles can happen.
Yeah, miracles happen all the time
Miracles
is what it
happen all
said.
the time.
Somebody posted that on a tree, and I was like, oh, that's really badass. That's cool. So I adopted that. I took a picture of it. Not even kidding you. Like an hour later, I'm talking to a guy who does stage booking, like artist booking for Electric Forest. And I was like, oh, this is cool. So we were talking about music, and he's like, yeah, he's like, you know, a lot of these artists use Ableton Live. I'd love to learn how to use Ableton. And I'm like, oh, dude, that's my job. Like I teach people how to use Ableton. He's like, well, you should teach me. I was like, and I was joking. I was like, hey, if you let me play here next weekend, because it's a 2-weekend festival, I was like, then I'll teach you Ableton. He's like, actually, we had some people back out. Do you want to play here next weekend? I was like, are you serious? I was like, yeah. He's like, you want to play? I was like, let me think about it. Sure. So, and I was like, dude, you haven't even heard my music yet. Like, he's like, oh yeah, you should probably send me one of your songs.
Yeah.
So I did.
Wow.
And next thing you know is he hits me up, and he's like, yeah, come back and play next weekend. So I got to go back and play in front of thousands and thousands of people on a really cool stage at Electric Forest. And
Sick.
it was magical. That was my first Philia show.
That's incredible. Wow.
It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
Basically, the lightning bolt struck you.
It really did. Yeah. In the best of ways. It was cool.
That's funny. That's, in a way, that's pretty much, I've never seen you teach a second in the classroom, but you're good to go. I've never heard your music. Get on the stage.
Exactly.
You know, just for being like friendly, personable, nice.
I guess, man.
Putting out
Yeah.
good energy.
Yeah, I guess so. So it was a cool miracle, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But I've been really blessed since then, man. It's opened a lot of doors just being able to tack that on the resume. And I mean, I've only been going under the name Philia for a little over 2 years or so. And yeah, I've had the chance to open up for Tiesto.
Wow.
This tiny little DJ. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. He came on tour through Indianapolis, and that was really fun. My mom was in the front row, and she's like this 60-year-old woman just like jumping up and down, going crazy with all these other like party college kids. It was hilarious.
That's so cool.
Thanks, Mom.
That's excellent. Good sport.
Yeah, she's great.
So it's volume 1. Does that imply there's more to come? Another volume?
Yes, there will be another volume. I haven't put a date on it yet. I'm just mostly focusing on playing live and working on my live show at this point. But one thing that I'm excited about in the whole live performance is really getting technical. I mean, I don't know how nerdy you want to get here, but basically just having my drum pad, my Roland Octapad, trigger the visuals and the lighting as things are being hit and happening in real time. So that's something I'm working with a small team of friends on right now to create a show that we're building that's going to be really dynamic. So you're actually seeing visually with video and the lights exactly what's happening as I'm playing it in real time. So it's not all just programmed, because a lot of times, especially with like the DJ world or stuff, you know, all the video production, everything's programmed already to trigger on certain hits. But if we can make it more dynamic, because I do a lot of improvising within a structured DJ set, it's kind of fun that way. It adds a more realistic, like organic type of show.
Nice. So you just kind of tapped into my one Black Friday purchase, which was Resolume.
Oh yes, that's exactly what we're using. Resolume Arena 6. Is it 6 now?
Yeah. I used that a few years back, and what I was doing is I made like these little cartoons on my iPad. Like I like to draw a little bit, so I made these like little guys that come out on the screen.
That's awesome.
Silly, but just something weird to put on while I'm playing.
Yeah.
And it was really nice working with Resolume, because I would have like MIDI clips in live that would send all kinds of data for like which clip to play to Resolume. And I would, on my APC 40, if I had like a filter sweep on it, say, I would also map that to like a color change in Resolume. So like as you do things, it happens visually too.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. I just, I kind of slipped out of that a little bit. And, you know, I had gotten Resolume through questionable means. So they were running in the sale. So I was like, yeah, I should do this. You know, it's
the
good
extended
software.
free trial.
Yeah. I've spoken about that on the podcast.
Right.
It was a phase I went through, you know, trying to gather everything I could and never making music. But yeah. So yeah, I picked that up, and I'm very excited to like kind of go back into that stuff a little bit.
That's great, man. Yeah, Resolume, it really is like looking at Ableton's session view, but for video.
It really is. It's very
it really
similar.
looks just like it, in a lot of ways.
I think if you have an understanding of live, you sort of already have a jump start. You've already kind of beat the like concept, you know, like when you first get live and you have to figure out session view, you're like, what? So you've already have that, and that's pretty much how it works with video in Resolume.
Yeah. Resolume's a beast. It can do some really cool things. And I know that there's a Max for Live patch you can run in Ableton to run straight to Resolume as well.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, if you look up Resolume Arena Max for Live device, I haven't had a chance to play with it a lot, but I know a friend who showed it to me and he uses it.
Nice.
So,
yeah, I was sending MIDI through the IAC driver on a Mac.
Oh, okay.
And you can MIDI map in Resolume. So it kind of worked, and now they have Link, so that's probably useful.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Ableton Link was a nice upgrade. Now it's in Serato, you know, it's in Resolume, all these other applications.
I think it's even in Bitwig, and it's in
Is it really?
It's in Reason. Yeah.
That's really funny, because Bitwig was kind of like, they broke off from Ableton to try to become a competitor. And
yeah, I thought that was like kind of cool. And I saw it, I was like, oh, that's nice.
It is.
We're all playing together.
Yeah, right. We're all family in the music world.
And that's something cool. And maybe this is a good place to finish off too, because I know we got to get going soon. But I think that's like something nice too, like about us just talking right now, you and I, because we're both doing a podcast, very similar thing, and it could very easily have been this, hey, that other podcast, you know, like don't listen to that one.
Right. Don't listen to that guy.
You know, drink Coke, not Pepsi. But
that's true though.
It's so much better to like embrace it, and like we're on the same team, we're doing the same thing, we're really a community, I guess. And I think that is often a place where a lot of bands, musicians run into problems when they see the other acts as their competitors. Really, we're all working together, and it's not like a McDonald's versus Burger King where you're going to eat one or the other. I mean, you can listen to my song, then your song, or my podcast, then your podcast, and have it all. There's no like exclusivity to that.
For sure.
So I think it's
really I would rather have my podcast be more like a Chick-fil-A, if that's okay. Because I'm not a huge Burger King or McDonald's fan, but Chick-fil-A, Yeah, I
Yeah,
could be compared to that and
like
be
a Trader
happy.
Joe's maybe for me.
Oh yeah, dude, Trader Joe's podcast. That'd be. We should partner with them. That'd be great. Free
Right.
sponsorships. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, going back to what you're saying is just celebrating the successes of others. I think if you do that well, then it's easy to grow with people
Yeah.
rather than seeing them as competition.
The rising tides raises all boats theory.
Yes. Yeah. No, for sure, man. And I think, you know, it all goes back to that train of thought is like helping other people. And I think that'll come back to help you as well. And we're all music producers and there's always something we can have to learn and grow together. And, you know, I'd much rather not to try to do it all my own. And going back to the whole Philia album thing real quick before we sign off is, you know, one thing I tell all of my students in producing and one thing I've adopted myself for this album is just to collaborate. And I tell a lot of people collaboration is key because you'll get new ideas. You'll be inspired in new ways, whether it's producing, even mixing. Like I don't master my own songs anymore because I don't want to, because it's nice to have another ear on some, but on a, you know, a different set of speakers. Somebody else might hear things I don't.
Yeah.
So I can master my own stuff. I master other people's stuff, but I'd much rather have a second ear on it and get new ideas and have a fresh perspective. And, you know, in all areas of producing and collaborating, I think that's really important.
I agree because you get so close to what you're working on. You get so attached. So I might have worked on this sound for like 3 nights and made it fit perfectly in my head. And then someone else can listen to it without that attachment and just be like, that song sounds better without it. Whereas I feel like I have to work it in.
It's so true, man. So true. And not being afraid to ask, I think, is a big part of it. Like one thing I've started doing more recently, and, you know, for other people I know that found a lot of success in the music scene, what they were doing is just going out and going to shows of people that are touring through your city and just taking a little flash drive and walk up to them and be like, hey, like you really inspired me. Like, I really love your music. I love this and this of what you guys are doing. And, you know, here is a flash drive with my music on it. If you guys ever come touring through this area again, I would love to open up for you. Or if you would just even listen to it and give me some feedback, I would love to hear from you. And you might be surprised how many people actually will listen to it and get back to you, you know?
Yeah.
That's just not being afraid to put yourself out there and ask for opportunities. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. You know, the worst that happens is nothing changes.
Which is what would happen if you don't do anything anyway.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. Great point. A great place to end. So get out there, everybody. Share. Be friends.
Go
be
share
nice.
some stuff. There you go.
Dan, it's really awesome talking to you. I think we should link up again sometime in the future. We've got a lot to share with each other, and I'm always interested in what you're doing. Your work is great, and the podcast is awesome. Ableton Live Music Producers Podcast. Check it out, everybody. And
I appreciate you, man. This has been fun. I'm really thankful you had me on the podcast, and we'll do this again someday for sure.
Well, I'm glad we both signed up for that Food Man listening session at Loop.
Oh yeah, dude. It was a miracle. It happened. Miracles happen all the time.
Yes, they do. Well, go check out the album Miracles. Miracles Happen, Volume 1. That's Philia, Philia, and that's feelingmusic.com, right? Yeah, feelingmusic.com.
Yes, sir. You can go check it out, and we'll all be friends. So come to a show sometime. I'd love to meet you. Yeah,
all right, cool. And, hey, if you come through New York, let me know too. I'll be there.
Oh yeah, dude. I love New York. It's my home away from home. As long as it's not in like the dead of winter, I'll probably come visit you when it gets warmer.
I could understand that.
Yeah, for sure. It's a different kind of cold up there.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. So thanks a lot. We'll say goodbye to everybody, and then we'll wrap it up quick and be good to go. So thanks so much for listening. Thanks, Dan, for being here. And you guys all have a great night.
Yeah, thanks, man. Take it easy.